The morning the baby arrived, the black horse stopped running. He stood alone at the edge of the field, tall and silent, his dark coat shining under the sun. His name was Shadow, a strong, proud horse known for never letting anyone come close. He was a creature of the wind, a spirit that ran with the sunrise and disappeared into the dusk. Wild and untamable, he belonged only to himself. Inside the small farmhouse, just a stone's throw away, baby Ethan slept in his mother's arms. He was a tiny miracle, wrapped in soft blankets, unaware that outside, a life had just changed course. When the baby let out his first cry from within the farmhouse walls, Shadow lifted his head. The sound wasn't loud, just a faint new noise carried on the breeze, but it reached him. Something about that tiny, fragile sound resonated deep inside, pulling at a string he never knew he had. Later that day, the sun hung warm and low in the sky. Ethan's mother, wanting to share the beauty of the afternoon with her son, brought the baby outside for some fresh air. She didn't go far, just to the wooden fence that separated the yard from the vast open field. As she stood there, humming softly to the sleeping infant, she saw a movement. It was Shadow. He was approaching slowly. Each step was deliberate, careful. His powerful muscles rippled under his dark coat, but his movements were filled with a gentleness no one had ever seen. The family watched, holding their breath. Everyone expected him to stop, to maintain the distance he always kept. But he didn't. He walked right up to the fence, his large, intelligent eyes fixed on the small bundle in the woman's arms. Then he did something extraordinary. He lowered his massive head inch by inch until his warm breath, smelling of sweet hay and open fields, touched the baby's tiny, exposed feet. The baby stirred in his sleep, a little wiggle of his toes, and then a small, sleepy smile graced his lips. Shadow froze. It was as if time itself had stopped. He'd seen humans before, seen them come and go, but this was different. For the first time in his life, he stepped closer still, pressing gently against the fence. It wasn't a move born of curiosity. It was something deeper. It felt like recognition. Some bonds don't need time to form. They don't require words or grand gestures. They are instant. They are profound. And they are forever. From that day forward, a silent pact was formed. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and a quiet, watchful presence became a constant in the baby's life. Whenever Ethan was outside, whether in his mother's arms or sleeping in his carriage, Shadow was there. He wouldn't run the fields anymore. Instead, he'd stand near the fence, a dark, silent guardian. When the wind blew too strong, threatening to chill the baby, Shadow would position himself just so, his large body acting as a living shield, breaking the cold gusts. When Ethan cried, a sound that could pierce a parent's heart, Shadow would nicker softly, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to soothe the infant until his cries subsided into soft coos. And when strangers approached the farmhouse, perhaps a delivery driver or a distant neighbor, Shadow's demeanor would shift. He'd move closer to the fence, his head held high, his ears alert. He became a protector, a clear and present signal that this child was not alone. The baby, in turn, seemed to understand. He would often curl his tiny, perfect fingers in Shadow's direction whenever the horse stood near. It was as if he could feel the horse's steadfast presence, a comforting warmth that made him feel safe. He knew, in that unspoken way that babies do, that he was being watched over. One warm afternoon, the air thick with the scent of summer, Ethan's mother laid him on a soft blanket under the sprawling branches of the old oak tree. The shade provided a cool respite from the sun, and the baby was happy, kicking his legs and watching the leaves dance above him. His mother went inside for just a moment, to grab a glass of water, leaving the door open so she could hear him. It was in that brief moment that Shadow's ears shot up. His entire body tensed. He saw something in the tall grass at the edge of the lawn, a slight, unnatural movement. A ripple where there should be stillness. Something wasn't right. Without a second thought, Shadow moved away from the fence and stepped closer to Ethan, placing his powerful front legs wide apart, creating a solid barrier around the baby on the blanket. His breathing grew heavy, his nostrils flaring. The air, just moments ago so peaceful, now felt tense, charged with an unseen threat. And then, the source of the disturbance revealed itself. From the tall grass, a snake slithered forward. It moved with a slow, silent grace that was both beautiful and deadly. The baby, unaware of the danger, simply laughed at the new, interesting creature. The snake, drawn by the movement or the warmth, moved closer. But Shadow acted without hesitation. He stomped the ground hard with his front hoof, the impact a percussive boom that shook the earth. The vibration startled the snake, causing it to recoil, but it wasn't enough. Shadow charged forward a few steps, stomping again, his movements aggressive and purposeful, forcing the snake to change its course, to turn away from the child. He stood between the danger and the baby, a dark, unmovable wall of pure protective instinct. The commotion brought Ethan's mother running outside. She stopped dead in her tracks, her heart leaping into her throat. The scene before her was the stuff of nightmares. Shadow, poised for battle. The snake, now retreating, and her baby, safe but just moments from peril. The father, hearing her gasp, rushed out and quickly dispatched the snake, ensuring the danger was truly gone. Shadow didn't move. He stood his ground, a statue of vigilance, until he was certain the threat had vanished. Only then did he relax, his breathing slowly returning to normal. After the fear subsided, a wave of overwhelming emotion washed over Ethan's mother. She dropped to her knees beside her son, her hands trembling as she pulled him into her arms, tears of relief and gratitude streaming down her face. She looked at the horse, this wild creature who had just saved her world. "You saved my son," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Shadow lowered his head slowly, his gaze soft. There was no pride in his posture, no demand for praise. He was simply present, as if to say, "Of course I did." From that day on, Shadow was never tied again. The ropes were removed, the gates left open. He didn't need them. He stayed by Ethan's side by choice. The months melted into a year. Ethan learned to crawl, and his first instinct was always to head toward the giant, gentle creature in the yard. Shadow, in turn, learned to walk with incredible slowness, always matching the baby's clumsy, determined pace. And when Ethan took his first shaky steps, it was Shadow's mane he reached for. The horse stood perfectly still, a living, breathing anchor, allowing the small child to grab onto him for support. The family and neighbors watched in silent awe. A baby and a black horse, two beings from different worlds, trusting each other completely. Years later, Ethan would ride on Shadow's back, his small hands holding tight, his laughter echoing across the fields. But the real story wasn't just in the riding. It was in the moments that came before, when a horse protected a boy who couldn't yet protect himself. Love doesn't always speak. It doesn't need to shout its name from the rooftops. Sometimes, it stands still and guards. As the sun sets over the field, casting long shadows across the golden grass, a young boy sleeps peacefully, his head resting against the warm, solid side of his best friend. Shadow stands watch, his gaze fixed on the horizon, ever vigilant. Still guarding, still choosing him. He was more than a horse. He was family.